Welcome to the Why Did I Get Cancer podcast. I'm Deborah Herlax-Enos, a small town girl turned TV nutritionist and healthy living expert. I design health programs for the average guy or gal, including those average guys named Metallica. On September 1st, 2020, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I asked every oncologist the same question, why did I get cancer? But none of my doctors had good answers for me. I wanted answers, and that's why I started this podcast. I want to help you to lower your cancer risk and provide self-care tips for those in the battle. I'm getting answers, and I want to share them with you. Hey everyone, before we start today's podcast, I just want to tell you, I started this podcast because I needed this information 5 years ago and it wasn't available. So here's how you can help me out. Can you leave a review? Even if you just click on Spotify and just give me 5 stars, pretty please, thank you. Because the more reviews I have and the more good reviews that I have, the more people will find this podcast. So whatever you can do a good deed today. Sometimes when my day is going a little bit wonky, I will go and just leave somebody a positive review because then I feel like it changes my day and it changes their day and their algorithm, fancy word for saying people will find their podcast a little easier. So thank you for your good reviews. I appreciate it. Hey everyone, welcome to Why Did I Get Cancer? This is a kind of a short episode today, and I just wanted to tell you about all the things that I learned in May. May was a big month for learning for me, and I had some great guests on the podcast, and I wanted to share some of my big takeaways. So if you don't have time to listen to the whole podcast, meaning the other episodes, you can just listen to this one and really get some gold out of it and immediately start putting it into your life. So one of my conversations was with Kelly Ryerson, also known as the glyphosate girl. Glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup, and I'm sure you've heard about it in the news. There's a lot of data, a lot of really good data showing that glyphosate is strongly linked to various types of cancer. And in fact, in areas of our country where a lot of farm workers are using glyphosate, cancer is off the charts there, along with lots of other illnesses. There's even an area in our country down in the Mississippi in the South, where Mississippi River, where it's actually called Cancer Alley, because that's where all the runoff goes to live or goes to die. So it was a really interesting conversation with Kelly. She's a fighter. She's an activist, and she's fighting for good food for our children, our soil health, because if we don't have good soil, we're not going to grow good food. That's where it really all starts. And glyphosate is notoriously rough on our soil. So we talked a little bit about glyphosate, how it got started. And it was created in the 60s as a pharmaceutical. The powers that be realized it wasn't a good pharmaceutical, but it was a good pipe cleaner. Okay, how interesting is that? Because what it would do, it would clean the pipes because it would grab all of the minerals and help clean the pipes. So you can imagine, if you just kind of break that down a little bit, it gathers up the minerals. So when we think about soil health and then the health of the plant that we're eating that grew in the soil, if it's sprayed with Roundup, or if it's a Roundup ready seed, which there are plenty of those genetically modified seeds out there, it's gathering up all the minerals and depleting minerals. So when I think about many of the chronic illnesses of our modern world, so many of them can be helped with an increase in minerals. And we have removed minerals from the soil. We have removed minerals from food. So that was a fascinating conversation about how Roundup really works. We also talked about Roundup in our country versus in other countries. So there is the company that makes Roundup. They actually make a couple of different versions of Roundup because Europe has really put their foot down and said, we don't want these types of toxins in our Roundup. And so the company that makes Roundup actually has done that. So they make a less toxic version for Europe, but the more toxic version is sold here in the United States. So if we can do that, we meaning not me, but these companies can make less toxic versions because other countries demand that for their citizens. I'm not quite sure why we can't do that here. I really appreciated Kelly's candor. I appreciate her passion for people to live a healthier life. And these toxins are hidden. We can't see these toxins in our food. We can't see these toxins in our environment, but they are everywhere. And I have a little story to tell. So, I've been trying to figure out, why did I get cancer? It certainly wasn't on my radar. And one of the things I decided to do a year ago was get a glyphosate test to see if I had glyphosate in my system. I grew up on a farm in the 70s. That's when Roundup was really heavily marketed to farmers as, hey, it's a great way to increase your yield. It's not toxic. Okay, total lie. It is toxic. But needless to say, we used it on our farm. All the farmers used it. I mean, Roundup was everywhere. It was not a big deal. Like that was just the standard of care when you were a farmer. And so I wondered, do I have toxic buildup in my system from that season of my life of growing up on a farm? And when I got my test back, it was a urine test. I was in the 95th percentile of having glyphosate in my system. I was off the charts. Even my doctor said, I might want to retest you. Like these are crazy numbers for somebody who eats organic food. We're very cautious in our yard. My husband and I do a lot of gardening, and we don't use chemicals in our yard at all. When I'm driving down the street and I see, somebody out there spraying, I roll up my windows, I turn my air recirculate on. I mean, I'm doing all the things to try to keep glyphosate at bay in my life. So it was a real shock to me. And I worked pretty hard to get this glyphosate out of my system. I'm now like in the 5th percentile. So I've gotten rid of so much of it. That is a podcast in and of itself. So remind me, I will record one of those. But I did a lot of liver detox, a lot of lymphatic drainage, jumped on my rebounder, got a water purification system. So I did lots of different things. But still, it was shocking to me how much I had in my system. And I don't want it in there. I know it is, I've read the data. It's a known carcinogen. I've already had cancer once. I don't want it again. So I am doing whatever I can to get that out of my body and keep it out of my body. So what other types of things am I doing? I am continuing to eat organic food. I go to my local farmers market, and that's where I get a lot of my food. I make sure I hit the organic section. And if they don't have a big organic section at my farmers market, I just talk to the farmers and I say, okay, tell me about what do you spray on your produce? What do you do for pest abatement? And many of them are, very proud that they use vinegar and other types of things to keep those chemicals off, keep the pests off without adding a lot of glyphosate into their soil and into the food. Again, I mentioned I have a water purification system. I use the Barreau water system, which I love. I worked diligently trying to find a water filter that would get glyphosate out of my water. And this was one of the only ones that I found that could do that. I really like it. It sits on my counter. It's really beautiful. And again, I do things to move my body every day where I'm sweating. So I'm not really a jogger anymore, but I might go to a hot yoga class, or at least a warm yoga class, lift weights. Even walking briskly up a hill will get me sweating. I also have a sauna blanket that I really love. I'll tag that in the show notes. And that really gets me sweating. So my doctor had suggested, really try to sweat at least 3 days a week. It doesn't have to be something crazy where I'm going to a hot yoga 5 days a week. That is way too much for me. But sweating 3 days a week, she felt would be a really way to just continue to detox and continue to get the junk out of my body. So again, my big takeaway, be vigilant. Get tested if you can. The test was about $100, so it wasn't horribly expensive. And it really gave me a good baseline of something that I could continue to work toward. I also had such a fun conversation this week with gerontologist Zora. That's not easy to say. She is a wealth of information. What's a gerontologist? She actually helps people to age better and in a more healthy way. She has a podcast called Hack My Age. What's a hack? It's a simple tip to help you to age better. A hack it's kind of just a healthy tip to allow you to look at things differently, make some small changes, and have hopefully a big result. So here's a couple of things that we talked about. She was diagnosed with osteoarthritis and she was young. She was barely 50. And she said, you know what? I just wasn't ready to have surgery. So she did a lot of healthy hacks to get her hips to last longer. How interesting is that? I mean, you've got to go and listen to the entire podcast. I'll tag it in the show notes. Fascinating that you can get this diagnosis and then think, all right, well, I know eventually I'm probably going to need surgery, but what can I do between now and then to get this to last a little bit longer? She talked about some of the modalities that she did to end up preventing or at least delaying her surgery. She tried PRP, which is where they take your blood, they do some centrifuging with the plasma and inject it back in. She said that was helpful. She also did a fair amount of physical therapy and just got stronger. We had such an interesting discussion about how muscle is truly the currency you use as you age. I will say I have a better understanding of that now at this age. When I was younger in my 30s, 40s, 50s, I ran a lot. I was always doing the cardio. I loved the sweating, I loved the endorphin release, and quite honestly, I just loved that it felt like it was burning a ton of calories and I was always thinking about my weight, which now I just don't really think about. I think about it a little bit, but not as much as I used to. So cardio, so easy for me. Weight training, I was so inconsistent. I never did it long enough to really see the results. So fast forward to today at 60, I'm lifting weights, heavy weights, 3 to 4 days a week. I feel like my body has completely changed. And it's not just from a weight perspective. My clothes fit differently, mainly in a good way. My clothes fit differently. But what I love the most about it is when I'm sitting in a chair, like even like a low chair, where 6 months ago it might have taken a little work to get me out of that chair. Now I can just pop right up. I can be sitting on the ground in an exercise class. I can just pop right up without thinking, ooh, is that going to hurt? Is it going to hurt my knee? Am I going to blow something out? I love being stronger. It has made all the difference, from carrying groceries into my house to gardening to just feeling like even if I fell, or maybe I'm lifting weights at the gym and maybe my form isn't 100% correct, I feel like my body is strong enough now that it's protected. And that's been an incredible confidence builder for me. So that's one of the things that I really love about lifting weights. Here's some of the other things that Zora and I were discussing. We talked about being stronger, having more muscle in your body. And here's some of the latest research. Improved cardiovascular health. More muscle mass is linked to better heart health. It increases your metabolism. You burn more calories with muscle than you do with fat. So it really helps with energy levels. Here's another one that I was surprised by. Muscle health is associated with better cognitive function, and strength training may enhance that. And then let's finish with this one. Greater muscular strength is linked to increased longevity. Okay, I will take increased longevity, because I will also tell you that with more muscle on my body, I hurt less. I still hurt a little bit here and there, joints ache and things like that. I mean, I'm 60 and it's menopause and I'm a former athlete, all those things. But I am telling you, probably 3 months into lifting weights, my pain has reduced dramatically. My confidence has grown, and I just feel a little sassy and a little tougher. And that makes me feel really good. It does make me feel really good. Makes me feel really healthy. I also feel like I can just handle more physical things coming at me, be it a long work day or a long travel day, or just, I'm out in the garden by myself. My husband's not around. And yeah, I can pick up a 40 pound bag of, soil and I'm okay. And I don't even hurt that much the next day, which is, I got to tell you, that is winning. Okay, here's one more big takeaway I had with my conversation with Zora. I was actually listening to one of her podcasts in preparation for my podcast with her, and she was interviewing the founder of a company called Vitali Skin Regeneration. And they were discussing copper peptides, which I like to think I'm pretty up on things. And I've read some research about peptides, but not enough. So I'm listening to this podcast and they are talking about copper peptides for skin. And this gal, I think it was her husband, had this horrible facial injury and he had this giant scar down his forehead. So they started using this copper peptide cream. And I got to tell you, you go on their website, you look at the before and afters, and you can still see that there's a little bit of a scar, but I mean, I thought it was going to be really bad, but he looks pretty darn good. And then Zora started talking about during this interview how she's had 2 hip replacements and she decided to use the copper peptides on one of the scars, but not on the other scars, just based on what she'd seen with this gal's husband and his results. And she said, after a few weeks, I went ahead and abandoned the project and just started putting the copper peptides on both scars because it was such a dramatic change in the scar. So that made me stop everything, go to their website, read some of their research, and I promptly ordered a bunch of their products. They haven't arrived yet, but I do have some high hopes because I have a lot of scars from 5 cancer surgeries, and I would love to see the scars loosen up. They're really tight, loosen up, lighten up. I will keep you posted on the progress, but here's one of the other reasons why I ordered some of these products. They were talking about crepey skin, and you midlife gals, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I had pretty good skin until I was forced to go off of all of my hormones at menopause, and then I got the crepey skin. So here's what I'm going to say about this. They were talking about how this body cream can really be helpful with that, but it takes a little while. Well, I've got time. So what I did is I went ahead and ordered it. I should be receiving it this week. I can't wait to tell you if it helps at all, but it's supposed to help tighten up the skin, increase collagen production. And you know what? I am a human laboratory. I do not mind trying these things on myself. So I will keep you posted. It was a great conversation with Zora. I learned a lot, and I will finish with this question that I asked Zora. And I said, is it ever too late to try any of these things? And her answer surprised me. And she said, it's never too late for many of them, but you want to get started as soon as you possibly can. And this was in connection with the discussion about exercise. So if you're thinking about exercising, even just walking 10 minutes a day, you're going to move your lymphatic fluid, you're going to get more blood flow going. In general, it is just going to really change your outlook. It's going to help to change your mindset. So wherever you are today, if you're thinking about adding some exercise in, she was really saying walking is just a really great place to start. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast short. In the show notes, I've got links to all the episodes that I was talking about, some of the products that Zora was suggesting, and more information about Kelly Ryerson. So I hope you have a great day. Enjoy. I am always searching for skin products because I have noticed at this age that my skin is changing and I don't love it. It's a little bit drier than I'd like it to be. It's a little crepey, and I'd like to have my 60-year-old brain and wisdom with my 30-year-old skin. Until that happens, I am trying different types of things. So One of my new items in my arsenal of anti-aging, copper peptides. I got to tell you, I didn't know much about peptide. Peptides are an amino acid. So combining that with copper appears in research to make a real difference with your skin. It can help to increase collagen and elastin production, which can make your skin appear firmer. And I didn't know a lot about that until I listened to a podcast on it. I have to tell you, I was really intrigued. I stopped everything I was doing, looked up the company, read some of their data, looked through their products, and then I promptly bought a bunch. Okay, so I can get a little wacky sometimes when I'm going down a rabbit hole, but I have to tell you, I am really impressed with their products. I know that miracles don't happen overnight when it comes to having firmer skin or less crepey skin. And you midlife gals, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I have a lot of girlfriends who've had skin tightening surgery, and you know what? Sometimes it doesn't always work, and it's a surgery. So I'm just curious, are there things that we can apply to our skin that can tighten it enough that we feel like we can wear sleeveless? I don't have the answer, but I am looking into a lot of different resources to have more of a kind of a low tox method. I can't say fix these things because I don't think it can fix it unless we're 30 years old, but to make the appearance of our skin look and feel as vibrant as we are. So I reached out to Vitali Skincare. I got a 20% coupon off for all of you. So if you go to the link in the show notes, there's information about what I ordered, a link to the podcast that I listened to where they interviewed the founder of the company. And then you got to go and see pictures of this gal. She is 69 years old, and I swear she looks 39. So I'll have what she's having. Hey, keep in mind, I'm not a doctor, and if you need medical advice, please reach out to your team. That is going to be just the best source for you because they know you. So again, I hope you enjoyed this podcast.